Hey guys, it's Dr Duce back again with another great set of music tech tips for you. Now, as a producer, I love the art of producing music in the box with the fantastic tools we have available today. Great plugins, great sounding instruments, etc. However, as a musician, there's nothing more pleasurable than playing a real musical instrument. Now, although I play keyboards, my favorite instrument is the bass guitar, and I grew up during an era when bass playing was a big deal. My favorite musician, in fact, is a bass player called Marcus Miller, who was a great influence on me, not only as a fantastic producer, but also as a great songwriter and unbelievable bassist. Anyway, so the plan for our session today is to show you how you can incorporate contemporary digital technologies with traditional musicianship. And I'm going to demonstrate that by showing you how you can marry a simple 808 bass line with the tones of an electric bass to add that extra feel and flavor that's sometimes missing from purely programmed instruments and sounds. Okay, so let's get into this. Okay, so I'll be starting off with this 808 bass line which I came up with. Have a quick listen. And now here it is with a simple drum beat that I've programmed. Okay, so the actual 808 bass line is being generated from this EXS24 sampler, which I've loaded up. The actual bass tone itself was a little bit flat, so I had to tune it up by 17 cents. I've also applied a glide, so you can hear certain notes glide from one note to the next. The final thing I've done is switched on the unison switch and set it to monophonic. So now I'm going to record the bass line on my electric bass so that it works alongside the 808 bass and grooves along with the drums. Okay, I'm also going to throw in a little bit of keyboards just to spice things up a bit, and afterwards we'll get into using flex time to make sure that the electric bass is exactly on point. Okay, now check it out. Okay, so now we've got our new electric bass line right here. Let's have a listen. Okay, cool. Now the very next thing I'm going to demonstrate is I'm going to convert the 808 bass line to audio. So I'm going to bounce this down to audio. And to do that, we're just going to highlight this whole section. And we're going to use the key command Control B to bounce in place, and let's do that. So now I'm going to apply the flex time function to the electric bass audio track. So So you click on there and we click here, and there we go. And now I'm going to hold down the Shift key and make sure that both of these tracks are selected. Then I'll press Z on the keyboard to zoom in. Okay, so that's nice and big, and we're ready to get into our editing. Okay, so the purpose of this part of the exercise is to make sure that the start point of the electric bass matches the exact start point of the 808 bass. Almost like quantization, where we're making sure that the start points are exactly on point. That will take away a little bit of the natural feel, but for this actual exercise, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. In fact, I'm going to use the key command right arrow to zoom in. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to close the inspector for now, just to give myself a bit more room. So that's I on the keyboard to close the inspector. And I'm going to scroll back here. And what we're looking for is, we want to look at these flex markers. Okay, now let's zoom in a touch more. And I want to make sure, so this one here, if we click that, we will see that it's a little bit late compared to this point right here. So what I want to do is I want to pull this back a bit so that we're starting exactly on bar 5 with that note. I'm moving along to this one, and as you can see, this one's a little bit early, so I'm going to grab this and I'm going to shift that one that way. Now this is very intricate, very precise work, but in terms of the timing of the notes being struck, it's really important, because we're talking about 2 bass instruments and they really ought to be in time because of the frequencies that we're looking at. So once again, we go here and I'm going to make sure that this is lined up with that. I'm going to leave this middle bit and I'm going to move over here, and you can see this one's a little bit out, so I'm going to pull this one back a bit, just to about here. Okay, and just keep scrolling through, and this one I imagine is here. You can see the transients of both basses, and this is really important. This is the reason why I converted the 808 bass to audio, so you can actually see the transients. Okay, now that one's on point, so that's good. Let's move to this one and we pull this back here. Okay, and scroll along just a little bit more, and now this one, that one's okay. That one's, we scroll along a bit more, and here, okay, so this one's a little bit early, I think. Yeah, let's squash that back there, and this one here, I think that's okay, and this one, we pull that one there. Scroll down a touch and let's go in a bit more. Right, so what is this? This one looks a bit weird. Maybe this one is here. This one, what's this? Yep. And this one might be here. We'll check it out in a minute anyway. Once we've done these few bars, we'll play back and see have a listen to see what everything sounds like. This one is good, and this one starts on bar 13. Okay, cool. Let's have a quick listen. In fact, let's just solo these 2 parts. Okay, and perfect, absolutely spot on. So I'm just going to carry on with this and finish off the edit, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so I've managed to adjust all of the flex markers, and all of my electric bass notes start exactly on point with the 808 bass notes. Now, the beauty of playing a live musical instrument is to do with the imperfections. So So the loose timing you get when playing an unquantized instrument is what gives your song the feel, that lovely human feel. That said, I wanted to make sure that these bass notes started exactly on point. You still get a human feel based on the duration of the note and the change in the timbre over time. However, I'm very keen to make sure that the start points are exactly the same. So let's have a quick listen to these first 8 bars. I'll then bring the drums in and a bit of the keys. Then you can hear how these two bass lines are working together. Okay, let's have a quick listen. Now there's one last thing I want to show you. Let's go to the actual 808 bass, and we're going to open up at the EQ and switch on the analyzer, and we're going to just close this here, go to the electric bass as well, and we're going to do the same. Open that up, make sure the analyzer is switched on. The top one is the 808 bass and the bottom one is the electric bass. Now we're looking at the range of frequencies occupied by the two instruments. So let's just play back and see. So as you can see, the 808 bass is very dominant in these lower and sub frequency ranges, whereas the electric bass is has dominance around maybe 80 Hertz and above the low mids, and even with some high mids. There are some high mid frequencies which are being triggered right here, and that's the sound of the steel strings. What you'd probably do is switch on a high pass filter and probably filter some of this low end out on the electric bass, maybe even up to about, I don't know, 40 Hertz, allowing the 808 to have that extra space to operate. But that will be dealt with in the mixing phase. But it's just useful to know that the reason why these two instruments will work well together is because they have different areas of dominance, and therefore they will complement each other even though they have different tones. Okay, so hopefully that's kind of made some sense in terms of how you can incorporate live instruments like an electric bass where there's already an existing 808 bass line in the track. I'll be demonstrating more in the BeatMakers breakdown on how you can bring in more of the traditional musical instruments into electronic music production. So hopefully this has been of use to you. As always, do remember to share, comment, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more. This is Dr. Duce. Peace.